Please rise for invocation by Rebecca T. Hivonen, Cross Creek Community Church.
Thank you, Mayor.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. When I was coming in tonight, I saw everyone out there enjoying the city center. I remember when it was all being planned. And now here it is, and here you are governing it. And we are so blessed to live in this beautiful city. Let's join our hearts in prayer. Lord, I just thank you for the privilege of living in Port Orange, Florida. I pray your blessing on the Port Orange City Council members, their families, and their friends. And we pray for your choice for the next city manager, too. Lord, I pray for safety and protection for everyone in Port Orange, especially our leaders, our first responders, our law enforcement, our healthcare workers, our teachers, and our most vulnerable from COVID-19. Lord, we're thankful for the vaccines. We pray for continued quick distribution and ample supply throughout Port Orange and surrounding cities. And last of all, great Lord, great God, grant our beloved leaders your wisdom as they govern our community. In the name of Jesus, my Lord and Savior, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilmember Foley.
Here.
Councilmember Tremont.
Here.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here. I can tell who has their microphones facing them and who doesn't by where the reverb is coming from and where it isn't.
I thought maybe Melanie just added a sound effect or
That's
dice.
it's been like that before.
I know,
Never
but
done
we've
that.
got the
You have something else
conference
down
phone
there.
on it, because we were trying to keep that out of the way, but it's not apparently working. Although we also tested.
With that, I need item 4, consent agenda, public comments on consent agenda items only. Anybody wish to speak? Robert. There's Robert. I was looking around for you.
Hidden. Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, North, Port Orange. On item B7F, ratification of an emergency change order for Danish Utilities. The Public Works Utility Department revised the contract in the amount of $67,990 because when the work was being performed, a 30-inch valve that was shown on the as-built underground drawing could not be located. This raises a lot of questions to me that were not answered in the agenda packet. One is, what was the quality of the drawing? Was it just shoddy? And was there not an inspection done prior to closing up the work the first time when it was originally installed to verify that it worked and performed in accordance with the engineering drawings? And then the question of, it was a temporary valve. If the original valve wasn't installed, why are we putting a temporary in? Why didn't we for that money, put in a permanent one so that we had for the future? And then there's also the question of reimbursement. Are we going after, is the city going to go after whoever did the original installation to get some reimbursement to defer this cost? And then the question is, what is the city doing in order to prevent this from ever happening in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Anyone else like to speak to anything that's on the consent agenda? There being none, I need a motion for approval for the agenda for the evening.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the evening's agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I'm sorry, quick council comment on that. Consent before we vote, please. If you don't
Okay.
mind. On one of the items, I didn't want to pull it, But on one of the items, I just wanted to make a comment because we have a representative here tonight from Lowe's. They're on the consent agenda here for a temporary permit, but
We're
it's
not
also.
voting on the consent agenda yet.
It's just overall agenda
Hold,
approval.
hold,
Go
I
ahead.
just don't, I want to make sure you say it in the right spot.
Go ahead.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion in regards to the consent agenda?
Uh,
Go ahead and pull it, Scott. Just pull it.
Which one do you want pulled, Scott?
It is.
Let's do it the right way.
14.
No, pull 7D.
Item 14.
Also pull 7D, please.
Motion to approve item 7D and
No,
14.
14.
You don't want a motion to approve item
to
7D
pull.
I
and
mean,
14.
pull,
You need a
excuse
motion.
me.
Motion to
second.
pull
Motion to
7D
pull.
and item 14 from consent.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion for approval of the remainder of the consent agenda?
I
Motion. Go ahead, John.
I motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
Second.
That would be items 7A through C, E, F, G, H, I, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15.
Yes.
We have a motion, proper second?
Can you repeat that? I'm kidding.
No. Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley?
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont?
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes. 5-0. Item 7D, approval of ratification of the International Unit of Police Association, IUPA 2021 to 2023 collective bargaining agreement. On my behest, I requested the Vice Mayor pull, a motion to pull that from the agenda, mainly because I just wanted to make a comment myself. When you're starting from scratch with a brand-new union, it's a lot of work, both on the part of the negotiating team for the union and the city. And I just wanted to convey my gratitude to all involved over the importance of this, and make sure that we are set.
Sorry about that, man. We're not getting a cat head that pops up, are we?
It's that kind of
Okay.
nightmare.
Is that kind of, I was just looking at Jamie, I said, this didn't happen when Jake was sitting there. Sorry. And there I was, praising city staff for the hard work. Jamie, you included in that, primarily. That's why I couldn't help but kid you. I thank you very much for your hard work on this.
Absolutely,
in
and,
getting
and,
that
and I know
done.
Officer White's in the audience as well, and I know he was integral in that as well. So,
When it
and
comes-
Chief Grimaldi, and of course, you know, everybody who participated. But
When it comes to taking care of our employees, the people who take care of our citizens, it's important work. With that, I'd like a motion to approve 7D.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Item 14. Scott, your comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. This is for a special event request for Lowe's doing a spring sale that they do annually, and they've gone to some great links to kind of be able to still host this, which the community seems to really look forward to, but also space things out and help out with the social distancing aspect of it. But what I wanted to mention is that
You cannot talk or listen until the host admits you to the meeting.
I was trying to get rid of the echo.
can I get a minute to read?
Well, it's not my computer. That's, just want to check the volume on the computer just in case you leave a video.
Error code 109.
That one's
Which
not-
button do we press to start the meeting over?
I cannot believe this.
Okay, we're on
Okay.
that.
Anyhow, one of the managers is here tonight, Rick Myers, and I just wanted to express our gratitude from the council for the manner and the many times that Lowe's is there to support the community in a lot of different ways. And you guys reached out to us completely unsolicited for a project and spearheaded and got involved in helping us out at Airport Road Park with the facilities out there, with just a tremendous amount of volunteer hours and dollars put into that. And you didn't have to do that, but you did, and it just goes to show what we look for in valued business partners in our community, and Lowe's is a great example of that. So because they're here tonight, I just wanted to make sure we say thank you for that, and we appreciate the partnership in our city for that too.
May I have a motion to approve item 14?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. recess council and convene the Port Orange Property Development Board. Pass the gavel.
Hope these guys do better than the council's doing it.
Call the annual meeting of the members, directors, and design review board of Port Orange Property Development, Inc. to order. Will the clerk call the roll?
Don Burnett,
Here.
Drew Bastian,
Here.
Scott Stiltner.
Here.
Chase Trayvont.
Here.
Jonathan Foley.
Here.
Everyone present accounted for. Do I have an objection to the notice of the meeting? There is no objection. Notice is accepted. Item number 3, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 4th, 2020 meeting, the members and directors?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All that in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes February 4th, 2020 meeting of the Design Review Board?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 3rd, 2020 special meeting of the members, directors, and design review board?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 6, we have election of the board directors. I'll accept the motion to elect Drew Bastian, Donald Burnett, Scott Stiltner, Chase Tremont, and the person elected to council in the special election. With the interim appointment, Jonathan Foley filling the position until the election. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments from the board? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 7, any further business will be brought before the members? There being none, we will move to the business of the Board of Directors. Do I have a nomination for the position of chairman?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate to re-elect you.
Second.
We have a motion to renominate myself, Chase Tremont, as chairman, and a second by Scott Stiltner. All those in favor, or any comment from the board? All
You're
right.
doing a fine
Sure.
job.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I have a motion to nominate a vice chairman.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. Drew Bastian.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Drew Bastian. Any other nominees? No. All those signify for Drew Bastian as vice chairman, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Vice chairman, now Drew Bastian, congratulations. Do I have a motion to nominate for president?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. Scott Stiltner as president.
I'll second.
Second.
Motion by Don Burnett, second by Jonathan Foley for president. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. I have a nomination for vice president.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate the District 1 council person, both the interim and then the permanent, to succeed the interim.
We have a nomination for the District 1 representative, and current interim, and we have a second by Scott Stiltner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries again. I have a nomination for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Don Burnett.
Second.
We have a nomination for Don Burnett by Drew Bastian, second by Jonathan Foley.
No drama in that one.
Any comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do I have a motion to re-elect the treasurer currently serving, the finance director, Dr. Scott Niels?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Don Burnett, second by Drew Bastian. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any further business to be brought before the Board of Directors? There being none, we'll move on to the business of the Design Review Board. We have the election of the chairman and vice chairman of the Design Review Board. Do I have a nomination to elect the chairman for a one-year term?
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate as a slate yourself for the chairman and Mr. Drew Bastian as vice chairman in the slate.
Second.
We have a nomination for myself and Drew Bastian as chairman and vice chairman. Motion by Don Burnett, seconded by Jonathan Foley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any further business to the Design Review Board? There being none, this annual meeting of the members, directors, and Design Review Board is adjourned.
As we pass the gavel,
About the
something in the
plastic
way there.
nonetheless.
Call to order the City Center Corporate Park Property Owners Association. Roll call, please.
Don Burnett,
Here?
Drew Bastian.
Here.
Scott Stiltner.
Here.
Chase Tremont.
Here.
Jonathan Foley.
Here.
I apologize, Robin. I didn't have my microphone up on me.
Do I have a motion to accept the notice of the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Wait,
All
who
in
was that
favor?
second?
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 4th, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Like sign if opposed. Item number 4 is the election of the Board of Directors for a one-year term. We have Don Burnett, Drew Bastian, Scott Stiltner, Chase Tremont, and the person elected to council in the special election with the interim appointment of Jonathan Foley to fill the position until the election. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as proposed.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign if you oppose. Item number 5, is there any other business to be brought before the members of this corporation? There being none, we will move to the business of the Board of Directors, which is item 6. Election of officer. The board must elect a new secretary to serve the remainder of Dr. Ford's term expiring January 2023. Do I have nominations to elect any of the following? For secretary, can I get a nomination for the person to be elected to the elected in the council seat for special election with the interim appointment being Jonathan Foley, filling the position until the election?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7, is there any other business to be brought before the Board of Directors of this corporation? There being none, meeting is adjourned.
And we are reconvened as council. That brings us all the way to citizen participation non-agenda. Robin, did I have any?
Not that no.
Okay. Council comments? Let's start at this end today. Scott?
Real quick, we got a long meeting tonight, but I just wanted to reach out to council and to Jamie if we can look at, I'd like to try to get a spot on a workshop somewhere in maybe March or April to update and review kind of a strategy session and workshop on Riverwalk Visionary and all that, kind of where we're at. We seem to be doing that roughly annually or every couple of years, and I want to get that up to speed so that when the new city manager is hired and seated, we can hand that division right away and it's ready to rock and roll. So I want to keep the momentum.
Fantastic idea.
Yeah, we've got some stuff going on down there now and stuff to come, and want to try to see what we can do to build behind that momentum. So what I would like to do is try to see about getting that scheduled, and also, Jamie, if you can kind of individually be meeting with all of the council folks to discuss their ideas so that staff is prepared at that workshop, so we can, you know, anybody that's got anything they want to think about, or we can kind of be prepared and make that very productive meeting. That's all I got, Mayor.
Drew?
Nothing tonight. It's a long agenda, so we're good.
Chase?
No.
Jonathan?
Nope.
Nothing? You guys are too easy. Well, I've got a very long list here, so first of all, Jamie, a week ago we put into place the panhandling, the aggressive panhandling ordinance. Could you give us an update on how we're doing through week 1?
Yes, Mayor. On Wednesday, the day after the ordinance was passed on second reading, the police department was prepared with a team to ensure everybody was informed about the new ordinance. Our first goal is always to educate and obtain voluntary compliance. So our officers took this opportunity to educate people on the new ordinance, but to offer services as well to individuals in need. We do see a good number of people continue to decline services when they are offered, and Chief Grimaldi is going to actually be presenting on some of our First Steps shelter information tonight, so that's part of that discussion as well. So in the first morning, the police department made contact with 9 people who were openly panhandling in a manner that was against our new ordinance, and our officers continued the effort throughout the week, making contact with 14 panhandlers within the first week. With each initial contact, they worked to educate and provide an opportunity for the voluntary compliance, and we had great success with this voluntary compliance. All parties chose to do so. We did have one person who was taken into custody based on an outstanding warrant. So our police department will continue to make contact as appropriate, continue to educate, and continue to offer available services.
I appreciate all the hard work that Chief and the department have put into the implementation of it. There's an awful lot of hard work that went into creating it. City Attorney Jones, I don't want to get too swelled ahead, particularly, and I don't want to heap too many praises knowing that we're going to review you in May and it might cost me money, but I'll still say good job. Thank you very much for that. Second thing I had, just wanted to get an update on where we are in preparation for getting the CAFR out.
Yes, Mayor. The work is still being completed. We do not anticipate that will be completed until well into March.
Okay.
But Dr. Niels is here and available if you have any specific
So the
questions.
timeline is late March right now?
Late March, yes, sir.
Okay. And then lastly, for those of you that were present before the council meeting, you heard this year on video the state of the city. That is available on YouTube. You can find the link on the city website. It's about 36 minutes in runtime, if I remember correctly. And if nothing else, I would like Mr. Lance Green to listen to the last 3 minutes of the video. With that, special awards, reports, recognition, proclamations, award ceremony presentation by the police department. Chief Grimaldi.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thank you. I'm going to ask, we have 2 officers being honored this evening. First officer I'm going to ask to come up is Officer Jamie Alamos for the Award of Achievement. On October 17th, 2020, Officer Jamie Alamos was conducting patrol operations in the area of the 500 block of Dunlawton Avenue when he observed the driver of a vehicle commit a traffic violation. As Officer Alamos attempted to effect the traffic stop, the vehicle fled from him until eventually stopping on Jackson Street. The driver quickly exited the vehicle and then fled from Officer Alamos on foot. After an organized search of the area by officers K9 and Air 1, the suspect evaded capture. Officer Alamos returned to the vehicle with other officers to process the car and look for clues. With the assistance of Officer Angelo Mendici, the officers were able to lift several latent fingerprints and find a loaded stolen handgun and cocaine in the car. 5 days later, the state lab reported back the results of the latent fingerprints that were submitted by Officer Alamos, and he was able to identify the suspect, who, by the way, was a convicted felon. The suspect was ultimately charged with fleeing and eluding, possession of cocaine, possession of drug paraphernalia, possession of a firearm and ammunition by a convicted felon, grand theft of a firearm, and driving while a license is suspended. Officer Alamos demonstrated a proactive mindset, courage under a tense situation, and perseverance to bring the rule of law to the criminal. By doing so, he removed drugs, a gun, and a dangerous person from our community. It is with pride that I present Officer Jamie Alamos with this award of achievement for a job well done. Great job, Jamie.
Standing with all these other big people, sometimes I'm thinking you're probably too close to fit us all in the... Oh, it's perfect. Okay, just checking.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you, Jamie. Our second officer being honored tonight is Officer Jared Alvasados for an Award of Achievement. Jared could not make it tonight. He's out on leave this evening, so he was unable to make it. However, I think it's important to read this into the record because it was such a great job that he did. On October 22nd, 2020, Officer Jared Alvasados responded to the area of 1200 Floral Springs Boulevard to assist other officers with locating a subject who fled on foot from them. Officer Alvasados maintained a post where he could observe the area. A short time later, Officer Alvasados saw the wanted subject running along the side of a pond. When the subject saw Officer Alvasados, he jumped into the pond to avoid being captured. Once in the pond and surrounded by officers, the subject became uncooperative, was highly agitated, and refused to exit the water. Officer Alvasados recognized this as a potentially dangerous situation, engaged the subject in dialogue while keeping a calm, professional composure. Numerous times the subject told Officer Alvasados that he wanted to die and that he wanted the officer to kill him. Officer Alvasados remained calm and built a rapport with the subject. He was able to convince the subject to exit the water on his own, and once he exited the water, he was taken into custody without incident or any type of force being used. Through his efforts, Officer Alvasados displayed professionalism, his commitment to the citizens of Port Orange, and his dedication to duty. During this incident, Officer Alvasados showed great restraint, composure, and a professional demeanor, which led to a safe, successful conclusion to a high-stress incident. And he's being awarded the Award of Achievement, and I will make sure that he gets this in front of his peers.
It seems like the roster was bringing in everybody with the A last name, so if you're doing this and everybody is going to be getting one of these, it tells you a lot of what's going on in Port Orange with our police department. They're here to serve, and they do a fantastic job of taking care of us and keeping our community safe. I want to thank you all for the job that you do on our behalf every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for allowing us to share this with our citizens and with the council as well. So thank you.
Thanks, sis. Absolutely. Board appointments, interviews, and reports. Citizen Advisory Committee for the TPO. I believe I saw Mr. Bobby Ball
Ball.
floating around out there.
Yeah.
Good evening, Bobby Ball with the CAC from TPO. We had our monthly meeting, and we must have got the same presentation you got last month about budget and funding and things like that. So that was a big part of the discussion, that the funding will be slim and going forward. So it seems like it's always that way. But really the only thing to report tonight from a good news standpoint is I volunteered to stay on the TIP subcommittee, which helps rank the projects, which we try to put Port Orange ahead. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Are you trying to set a record for length of time on this committee representing Port Orange? Because you've done this an awful long
I'll go
time.
as long
I
as you want
really
me to.
appreciate that.
Yeah, go as long as you want me to.
Well, with the way a lot of these projects, the timelines, these projects are massive
Years.
projects. They're huge. These are not projects that the idea pops up or the need pops up and in a year or two these are done. These are projects that sometimes last 15, 20 years to see these things through. And hopefully some of the ones we've got on our plate won't take quite that long, but having people that stay in the process all the way through helps us a lot from getting bumped down and be able to try to maintain and for our positions and fight for our residents and our community.
We always seem to be talking about last year's rankings for the following year, and yet to remind some folks sometimes why they're ranked where they're at.
Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing too. Let's face it, it does take years sometimes. We've got a couple of projects coming this year with some turn lane extensions that will help with some traffic alleviation that have been on our master plan to get funding for literally for years. So let's keep at it.
Well,
Appreciate it.
and to that note, since Bobby's at the podium, the other thing that we'll need to look at as a council, and I had a brief conversation with Tim Berman about this, is we really are going to have to look at a strategy discussion and maybe a workshop on the Williamson overpass issue, which is not necessarily our overpass or our road, but it comes into our community, and it's really going to be a massive impact and a choke point. And we need to, that's another thing that's going to probably need to be talked a little bit about in the workshop. How do we pull together the state and county partners and interested parties and figure out what the plan is on that, because that bridge itself is the critical point of that whole thing, but it also holds the largest amount of cost. But it's got to get figured out somewhere. It's got to get figured out, because that's going to be very problematic for the community, with that being such a major artery point. So we'll try to figure out a way to have that on a workshop and at least open that discussion and see what we can do to influence some of those decisions at the county and state level.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything for Mr. Ball?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bobby.
Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby.
That brings us to the Golf Advisory Board. Speaking of Lance Green,
There he is.
Surprised the police wasn't talking about me, but hey.
behind your back maybe.
I know. Lance Green, Golf Advisory Committee, and I got reelected again. I don't know how that happened.
Good for you.
Couple things to report, not any much different than last report, is that the golf course is making money. The golf course has never seen better success in years and years. And with that also, the golf course has probably never looked better as far as condition-wise. I mean, we've got a guy out there who is getting it done, and he said exactly what he was going to do, and he's achieved it. And so, you know, with that being said, we've got to continue to try and support him. So a couple of things that we keep talking about, and it's cart paths, and we've got to continue to budget to repair cart paths and replace cart paths. We just got done doing some this year. Worked out great. So we've got some critical areas done, but same token, during the hurricanes, a lot of the cart paths got broken by the big trucks and the big equipment trying to get the trees off. So it's not just a matter of them being on a level, but they're broken. You know what I mean? So the cart path and the cart path budget is something that's gonna have to be a continuing thing annually. We gotta continue to put money into either grinding them or fixing them or one of the other things. So we're having a little issue with security as far as the school kids coming from the middle school. Once again, they're cutting right through number 3, they're cutting right through the housing development, they're cutting right through number 8, heading to the apartment complex. They'll pretty much tell you what they think. So there's not a lot that Cypress Head management can do as far as, you know, getting confrontational with these kids, but we might need a little bit of help from the chief maybe, if we could get a little bit of patrols coming down when the middle schools are later now, and when we get to the summer months, so the golf leagues are later. There's gonna be a lot of guys playing golf, and them kids are just cutting. They don't care. They are cutting right slap through number 3 and through number 8. And like I said, they'll tell you what they're gonna do. So,
Jamie, you made note of that, yes? Okay.
So again, just something to think about coming up. The contract is going to be coming up for the management, and it's coming up next year. But I know it's something that's coming up, and it's something that we need to be thinking about as we move forward and where we're going to go with it. Protecting the course as far as etiquette goes is still a big thing out there. That's the one downside I see with the management out there, is that we do not have a ranger. We do not have anybody who's watching anybody play golf on the course. And so people are pretty much, it's a free-for-all. They're gonna drive where they want, they're gonna do what they want, and we're expecting this superintendent to keep this course in great shape. And it's, you know, again, etiquette has a lot to do with it. A lot of it has to do with people who live there. So I want to put that on the record. Again, as we move forward, and again, it's just, you know, the opinion of us on the board, I'm sure it's probably the opinion of the council, is if this golf course continues to make money and see success, we need to continue to reinvest those profits back into the course. If the course breaks even, I think we're in great shape. But if we make money, we need to put that money right back into that budget. Must keep it, because it's old. It's an old course. The guy's replacing sprinklers. He's doing a great job, and he's got his budgets going. So, and then the one other thing was that Cypress Head HOA actually planted ahead all the way down number 8. Scott, you met out there with me that day. They got all that done.
Excellent.
Questions?
Yeah, any irregularities in your election, in the voting?
There was one no. It wasn't unanimous.
You voted against yourself, huh?
I tried.
Great job.
Vote himself.
Any other questions?
How you doing, sir?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Hey, that's it?
That's
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thanks,
Well,
Lance.
one more thing. Just wanted to offer my condolences
Yes.
Yes.
And
Appreciate that.
We've
Yes,
all
sir.
been thinking about you.
Thank you.
And seriously, go look at the last 3 minutes of the state of the city.
Appreciate
I think
it.
you'd be
Thanks,
proud.
guys.
See you, Lance.
Thanks,
Thanks, Lance.
See ya.
It brings us to the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing portion of the meeting is now open with item 22, second reading of ordinance number 2021-3. Ordinance number 2021-3 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, rezoning property consisting of approximately plus or minus 1.1 acres from R8SF single-family residential to government public use, authorizing revision of the official zoning atlas and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2021-3.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item's open on the floor for discussion. Second reading, council, any comments or questions? There being none, would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, council, final comments or questions? Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Second reading of ordinance number 2021-4, residency requirements for administrative officials. Ordinance number 2021-4 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Section 2-186, Code of Ordinances, to change the requirements of administrative professionals, providing for codification, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2021-4.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item's open and on the floor for discussion. Council comments or questions? Well, before I do that, Jamie, do you want to recap this for us and any changes, the changes we asked at first reading were implemented, yes?
Yes, sir, Mayor and Council, this is an item that was brought before you on first reading, and we outlined the reasons in the agenda item that we were requesting Council reconsider the position of having administrative officials be required to live within city limits. We have amended the ordinance to be in accordance with the direction that Council provided last time, which was that administrative officials would be required to reside within 15 miles of city limits, with the exception of the police and the fire chief, which would be required to still maintain residency. This provision does allow for the city manager to designate which administrative officials require residency with the concurrence of council. And I do anticipate that there will be requests for council to consider a waiver of these requirements.
Okay. Questions, council? Anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, final comments, council?
We're going to be asking for a waiver already.
Yes, sir. I do believe that you will see a waiver of requirement based on previous discussion was based on a 15 versus a 20 mile radius. I think that you will see a request for a waiver to get within the 20-mile radius, as well as another waiver for a consideration for a location unknown on the second item, but there are two items that I'm aware of.
And I think that we have to consider the fact that the reason why we have the waiver process there is 15 miles, depending on which way you're going or more, or where you're coming from, it's not the same. So there does need to be some kind of waiver process. 10 miles in one direction could be the same as 20 miles in another, depending on where you're going or where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not supporting the, I voted no on the first one, I'll vote no on the second one as well. But would it just behoove us to make an amendment to accommodate the people that we're already going to be given a waiver for?
If you do that, then you're codifying it for everybody all the time. You're not, we're not talking about exceptional situations.
We kind of are having special situations if we're passing one with the understanding that we're already going to have a waiver for somebody and then maybe another one, and we're excluding two department heads, so it kind of have specialties all over it.
Well, we haven't heard those waiver requests yet. You can say yes, you can say no. City manager's got a little leeway to bring that forward to us for what makes sense.
All right.
Any other comments?
It certainly is hard to say yes to doing something when you know you're going to change it immediately. You set rules, you set precedents, you say this is the way we want things to be, and how do we go forward with that if we know that we're going to be modifying it and making exceptions immediately from something that we're trying to pass today?
Well, except for that the ordinance in the rules allows for the exceptions. There are rules for exceptions that make sense. If somebody lives 17 miles from the city and travel time is deemed sufficient by the city manager, then I would accept that recommendation. If somebody lives 25 miles, and depending on which direction they live in, if they live 25 miles to the south, they can get here a lot faster than they can if they live 25 miles to the north or the west of us. So there are rules that allow for the city manager to examine this and bring those things to us. And that's why those rules are spelled out in the ordinance, that we can make the exception for those things that make sense.
I don't have a problem making exceptions. We do it all the time with a lot of our different ordinances. I'm just asking
We
the question.
exercise our judgment.
Yeah, I'm just asking the question, would we just, if we're gonna pass it at 15, do you wanna should we amend it and just say 20?
I'm really not in favor of that myself. I mean, if you guys want to do that and there's a motion a second, we can do that. Reason, I just feel like when you get outside of 15, it's not the same depending on what direction you're going from, and it's also not the same depending on which department head you're talking about. Some things are a higher priority and some things are a lower priority.
Yeah. Not a hill I'm wanting to die on, just brought it up for
No,
discussion.
that's fine.
And well, you make a great point. Not everything's the same. Someone who lives just across the Dunlawton Bridge, which is going to be so close, and then versus, I mean, someone can be outside the city limits and be in Ponce Inlet and be closer than I live from Councilman Stiltner.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
That's why we need to have provisions to make certain exceptions. The other thing that I want to point out is that this is once we put this in place, this is for time moving forward. I want to be able to do something we haven't necessarily been able to do, and that's attract local talent. When you attract local talent that's looking to advance themselves, you have the ability to improve your own organization and do it within a means that might be more cost efficient. We haven't been able to do that because of this ordinance in certain cases. In other cases, we might lose out on talent because the job itself does not necessarily worth somebody moving 2 miles and go through the expense of selling a house and buying another.
Right.
So, and the housing market itself, let's face it, Port Orange, we've got a good chunk of higher end properties right now that it could change at any time because that's the nature of markets. But the middle class housing market, very, very tight on inventory. So somebody may have best of intentions on moving to within the city in 6 months and find nothing that falls within their budget. So I think that we need to have the ability to be flexible and be reasonable, but at the same time cast a little bit wider net when it comes to attracting good talent.
Yeah, I think with the questions on the 15 versus the 20 miles, I was okay with up to the 20 miles basically in any direction. I don't care, but I'm not going to nitpick north, south, east, west. And I kind of, am just thinking that we're trying to treat the chief of police and the fire chief differently
Absolutely.
than the others. And
Absolutely.
And
those are different positions.
but typically they're not the first initial response to even a major emergency.
Mm-hmm.
They're notified and then they'll get here and whatever, but they're not responding to the first call. And I just think we really should just have the thing apply to all administrative officials and department heads and not force those two into that same
I don't think we're forcing them
parameters.
into something that they're not we're not changing anything for them.
I get that too, but I'm just kind of.
And they have the ability to apply for a waiver.
I understand that too, but, you know, the first call, we did 15 miles, and I was more leaning towards the 20 mile, not anything further than that.
Yeah.
So I just think it should be a blanket policy that doesn't single out that. I get it, they both live in the city now. However, you know, looking into the future and technology, like I said, they're just not they don't respond to the first call out for even a major emergency. They're not the first ones there. They're contacted and let know about it, and they could start heading this way or whatever. So I'd just like to see us change it, but you know, whatever council supports. I get it. I get it. There's a waiver process. I'd just like to see the 20-mile limit and have the policy the same for all department heads and officials. That's my thoughts.
Any other comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Foley,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont,
No.
Councilmember Stiltner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian,
No.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 3-2. Brings us to first reading of ordinance number 2021-6. Ordinance number 2021-6 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the Land Development Code, Chapter 2, Section 2, to amend the definition of accessory structure and delete obsolete terms and definitions related to new and existing mobile homes and manufactured home parks or subdivisions. Amending Chapter 8, Article 3, Section 9, to provide criteria for accessory structures in flood hazard areas, to specify elevation of manufactured homes in flood hazard areas, providing for applicability, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2021-6, amending chapters 2 and 8 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The item is open and on the floor for discussion. We haven't seen you in a while.
It has been a while.
How are you doing?
Good evening, Margaret Tomlinson, Construction and Engineering Manager. So this proposed LDC amendment is basically a housekeeping item. It ensures that the city's floodplain management regulations are consistent with FEMA policy that went into effect on January 1st of this year. It also ensures that the city retains its Class 5 rating in the community rating system of the National Flood Insurance Program, which provides flood insurance discounts to Port Orange policyholders. There's basically two parts to the amendment. The first part is it continues the city's existing practice of permitting wet flood-proofed accessory structures such as sheds. And the second part to this amendment eliminates the option to elevate a manufactured home in existing manufactured home parks or subdivisions 36 inches in height above grade. This only applies in flood zone A, which is where the base flood is not known. And we did an analysis with GIS with all of the existing manufactured home parks and subdivisions overlaid with flood zone A, and it doesn't affect anyone in the city of Port Orange. So staff is recommending approval of this LDC amendment.
Comments or questions, council?
This makes sense.
I don't want to say it's cut and dry with emphasis on dry, but it's a little dry. There being none, thank you. Anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us, council. Comments or questions? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Foley,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont,
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Brings us to first reading of ordinance number 2021-7. Ordinance number 2021-7 is the ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, approving the First Amendment to the Sunset Cove A Residential PUD Master Development Agreement, MDA, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2021-7, First Amendment to the Sunset Cove MDA.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item is open and on the floor for discussion. And wow, we're just getting all the great faces from community development tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Penelope Cruz Planning. So this is really just an MDA amendment that addresses one particular lot in this subdivision. There was an oversight in the permitting process, and this MDA amendment addresses that. It's to approve just the rear yard, not the sides, setback going from 8 to 6 feet for the pool. Typically, this setback is provided to create that separation between adjacent properties and these structures. In this particular case, this property backs to approximately 70-foot wide common area, as well as beyond that, another 100-foot wide canal. So there's not an impact to any other adjacent property with this one reduced setback. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
I just noticed that when I looked at the image, there is a home 2 doors down with a pool and a home 3 doors down with a pool. Is this because that particular structure did the porch and now wants to do the pool?
No, this was an oversight in the permitting process.
Got it, okay. All right. It looks like the image speaks clearly that this is not gonna be a problem, so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Other comments, questions?
Is the resident pleased?
Yes, sir. If this is approved, they will be.
You think?
Right.
Anything else? Thank you. Would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us. Council comments, questions?
Looks like it'll fit very well.
Yeah.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley?
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Yeah.
Tremont, sorry.
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, somebody was ready to vote. 5-0. That closes the public hearing portion of the meeting. That brings us to the regular agenda item. The recommended item 26 of the award of RFP number 21-01 for solid waste collection services and disposal services. The recommended motions to move to approve award of RFP 21-01 solid waste collection and disposal services to Waste Pro of Florida. I've heard of them somewhere. And authorize the evaluation committee to negotiate the commercial rate structure not to exceed the total cost for containerized commercial services provided in Waste Pro's response to the RFP for inclusion in the final contract. May I have such a motion?
Motion approved as stated.
Second.
You weren't going to say all that all over again?
No,
We
you
have a
just
mo-
read it.
There you go. We have a motion and a proper second. The item's open on the floor for discussion. We're getting all the wonderful faces tonight, aren't we?
Good evening. Lynn Stevens, Public Works Utilities Director. Yes, sir. We are asking council to approve the award of this bid. The contract that we currently have was a 10-year contract. It expires in October 2021, on October 31st actually. So this new contract would take effect on November 1st, 2021. So what staff has done is we went out for bid for the services. We received 2 bids where we had an evaluation committee that looked at all the bids. We evaluated the bids based on the evaluation criteria that was established. At the conclusion of the bid evaluation, the committee unanimously recommended that Waste Pro of Florida be awarded the contract. We are asking authorization to do some negotiation, allow the committee to do negotiation with Waste Pro, only on the structure of the commercial containers, not on residential or commercial hand-picked services. So what we wanted to do is their original bid provided for a tiered rate structure, and we would prefer to have a flat rate structure similar to what we have now. When we do the negotiation, the price won't change, so at the end of the day, we will still be at the same prices. You can see that there is a slight increase in price. We do have 2 alternates. I'll be back in front of you next Tuesday to give you all the information about the alternates and get some direction from council as to which way we wish to go for the alternates. So at this particular time, we just want to award the bid, authorize the committee to negotiate that commercial rate with the vendor, and then we will be back to you next week to talk about the options, to see which option council prefers to go with. And then we'll be back in front of you on March 2nd to actually approve the contract.
Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Stevens, council?
Explain the options again, because are we looking at an increase in residential rates?
So we are going to go for a rate study as soon as this bid is awarded. I have the contract already queued up to do the rate study. So we're on a very tight timeline. Not that it impacts council's direction, but I have it laid out that we award the bid, we do the negotiation, we provide council at the workshop the different options. We'll talk about the 2 alternates that we put out there. We'll decide which level of service council prefers. That would give you some time to think about that and give us some direction before we finalize the contract and bring it back for approval on March 2nd. During that time, once we finalize that, we have already queued up a professional services group to come start the rate study. We want to finalize the rate study in May of this year, and then we will start doing public education on any potential changes in rates to the residents. This is just one portion of the solid waste service that we provide. So you have collection, which is done under this particular contract. We have another contract with GEL for the recycling. So that is another expense that's added to the solid waste bill that we pass on to our customers. There's also the expense of the tipping fees, because the tipping fees for the landfill are not included in this contract. The city pays the tipping fees directly to Volusia County. So it is a 3-pronged approach for solid waste services. And we want to have all of that ready when we develop our budgets for next year. We'll be coming back to council with recommendations on the rate structures.
I think we also need to take a look at the environment we were operating in 10 years ago. We got a recession era sweetheart contract for 10 years where we had some of the best pricing in all of Volusia County. And I think that we will continue to have some of the best pricing for our residents in all of Volusia County. I just don't think it's realistic that we can do it at the same price. Certainly you're charged with making sure that whatever adjustment is not radical, but palatable. But I think we also need to take a look at, I just also want to say something about Waste Pro in general. None of the rest of you were up here 10 years ago when we went through this. They were actually our second choice bidder 10 years ago. In the negotiation process, after council had chosen its first place bidder, which was our current contractor at the time, Viola, those negotiations went south, and we had to call an emergency council meeting on Friday to figure out who was going to pick up trash on Monday, whether our current contractor was going to continue or not, or whether we're going to move on from that. Waste Pro was ready. And I'm talking, it wasn't perfect, but it was wonderful to know that they were ready to help us then, and they stepped up. That was a Friday evening, and believe me, we don't have very many Friday evening council meetings, but when you know that your trash isn't getting picked up on Monday, you will, and I have not forgotten that, and I never will.
Just to finish up my final, just to put on the record, I'm pleased with the selection. I was glad to see that Waste Pro has been chosen. I'll be looking forward to supporting. Good luck with your negotiations there. The amount that they give back to the community and the amount of stories that I get to read from elderly folks that, hey, these kind gentlemen bring my trash can back up to the side of my house for me because I'm unable to do it. That's the kind of partner that I appreciate working with.
Amen.
And I think I did not answer your question, Councilmember Tremont.
No, I get it. Yeah.
The alternates. So we had a lot of input from the community about 1-day-a-week service versus 2-day-a-week service, and what would that look like. So we included that in this RFP. So we're going to be evaluating whether we're going to be 2-day-a-week garbage service for residential, or we're going to go with 1-day-a-week garbage service with the customer providing the can, or 1-day-a-week garbage service with the vendor providing the can.
And that's what we'll be talking about at the workshop.
That's what we'll be talking
Let
about
me tell
at the
you,
workshop.
I change about 6 diapers a day. They ain't sitting in a trash can for over a week.
I think I know where he's going.
Can we get an option 4 for the Tremont house?
I see
So
the Amazon.
that'll be the
We've got a
discussion on the
7-day-a-week
23rd.
plan.
And
but
this
that's only-
contract, I'm sorry.
No.
The bid did allow for annual increases based on CPI, and it specifically calls out the CPI and how that's calculated.
Okay.
So
Saw
it's
that.
very clear in the bid.
And you'll only be negotiating the commercial rate. We're not talking about residents. Like after we award this, it's only to go discuss going to a flat commercial rate.
That is correct.
There won't be any discussion as far as the residential rate is concerned.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I just want to say, I mean, I'm on board with approving this. I just want to echo Chase's comments. Waste Pro has been a great asset to our community. They really have. You know, these are one of the services I kind of watch a lot. I've been hard on them at times, but all in all, they really provide a really good service. And one of the things that I've been most impressed about that I wanted to note is that from time to time, a resident will call up and my garbage didn't get picked up, or they ran over my can, or they whatever. And one of the things that I most appreciate is the staff, the senior staff at Waste Pro. They take those things seriously. They look into them, and many times we find out it didn't have anything to do with their company, that it was somebody else that hit the garbage can, or they actually didn't get the garbage out in time, and things like that. So, and I get that happens, and I want to make sure that we mention how much we appreciate that, because that's an important thing. We're going to talk about numbers, how many times your trash gets picked up, what days, how much, all that good stuff, but those types of things really mean a lot in our community as well, and so I'm appreciative of that, and they've demonstrated that for many years now. So,
They have been a great partner.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevens.
Absolutely.
Would anyone here care to speak to the item? No citizens' input, comes back to council. Any other comments or questions? Don't think you're getting off easy. I'm calling you up here in a second. Call the roll.
Councilmember Foley,
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont,
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner,
yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Come on up, Kim. You brought company, you might as well bring them all.
Mayor and Council and Acting City Manager, thank you very much for the opportunity to come up here. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're very excited about extending this contract to another term, hopefully 10 years. I have with me tonight Susie Dolan. She's one of our marketing executives, and she handles Volusia County, helps me in numerous ways as we're working with our cities. I also have my new boss. That's Eric Sankey. He's the region vice president for the Central Florida region. So we all worked very hard on this. It was a good effort to look at everything again. We've given you 3 options, and pricing is not much different than we have right now. So thank you very much. We really appreciate the partnership we've built with the city, and we're going to continue to do those things, and we just really like being your hauler.
The core mission of a city when it comes to serving its residents, we basically have 4 duties, and everything else we do are quality of life questions. But we have to provide police protection. We do that ourselves. We have to provide fire and medical. We do that ourselves. We have to provide water service, and that's kind of 2-tiered. We have to bring water to houses. We have to bring water away from houses. We do that ourselves. We have to pick up trash. Those are our core services. We don't do that ourselves. So whoever we partner with, we have to partner with somebody that we can trust, because you're going to try to get it right, and you're going to get it right most of the time, and you've got a terrific success rate. And when you don't get it right, you go out and fix it, and you don't mess around in doing it. And I appreciate your track record with that, and I look forward to a lengthy track record as a partner with the city. I really do look forward to this. I look forward to this not just as we're hiring you to do a service, but you really are a partner of ours.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to give a shout out to my crews. When you think about it, we're making a little bit over 100,000 individual services to commercial and residential homes every week. And, you know,
it's kind of a lot.
Who knows what the residents put out? They may not know what they're putting out, but we have a tremendous exposure with COVID, and our crews, we've had some cases of COVID in our organization, but we've done what we've had to do to make sure service has not been disrupted.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
You.
Thanks.
First Step Shelter update, item 27. Who do we have presenting, Jamie?
Yes, Mayor. Chief Grimaldi is going to be coming up to provide you a brief update on our experiences with the First Step Shelter and some of the requirements that are needed to be met, along with the associated safe zone. So this presentation tonight is just informational at this time. I do want you guys to know that Susan and I made a trip down to the First Step Shelter last week to see the facility, gain a better understanding of the program, and I do look forward to further developing that relationship and to make sure we have a successful partnership going forward. So with that, Chief Grimaldi.
Thank you. Chief Tom Grimaldi, Port Orange Police Department. So after a little bit of a delay, I think there were some construction delays getting the shelter up and running. It finally came to fruition at the end of 2019. Much needed, by the way. I believe that it very much needed to have a shelter in this area in Volusia County. So they got up and running at the end of 2009, and then they got hit by a buzzsaw called COVID-19, which affected all of us, including them. And they closed for a while. So they closed for a good portion of 2020 at the beginning of the year until September 14th. So we really didn't have a whole lot. We didn't have anything to go to at that point. Very understandable. They did reopen again in September, and they were limited because, again, they're trying to deal with the COVID pandemic, and so they were not accepting females because they had to separate and space everybody out. Finally, in November of this past year, they opened up the safe zone, and that was really what we were looking for. And from what I heard from council, what we were looking for. And so the difference between the safe zone and the shelter itself, and I think you have to understand that it's in one area, but they are separate, because the shelter actually provides services such as getting people back on their feet, being involved in, could be anything, in substance abuse, education, treatment, things of that nature. However, if somebody is homeless and doesn't want those services, the safe zone provides an outlet for them where they can still go and be in a safe area and have some type of service, at least shelter. And they're dropped off by the police officers overnight, and they get shelter and a meal in the safe zone. And that's really important for us, is the safe zone. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's so important. So I'll give you an idea of how it works for our officers when we're out on the street. So our procedures are, obviously, we have to have a reasonable belief that the person is homeless. We just can't bring anybody to the shelter. They have to be homeless shelter because, after all, it is a homeless shelter. Makes sense. Kind of easy day there, right? We offer shelter services. If they agree to those services, we then contact the shelter directly. There are some requirements that are prerequisites that need to be addressed before somebody goes into the shelter. Some like outstanding warrants. So we check every individual for outstanding arrest warrants. If they're intoxicated or they're making suicidal statements, they're not eligible for that, for the shelter. Or if the person needs medical attention. That's turning into a little bit, we're in discussions right now with the shelter about what medical attention is, because what we're starting to hear a little bit now is COVID testing. And I don't know whose lap that's going to fall in for cost, for a lot of things. If my officers have to sit and wait for somebody to be COVID tested, I'm not sure how that's going to work logistically. We're looking into that right now. So that's kind of, again, it's in motion right now. Kind of a dynamic situation, but it is, again, the whole process is fairly new. We have to search the persons. We have to search them for just items on them. There are certain prohibited items, such as weapons and such, and some personal belongings. They only have so much space where they can bring their personal belongings, so we have to figure what we do with that. Typically, what we do is we will hold it for them if it's not anything extreme. And then there is a safe zone referral form that our officers fill out for everybody that is brought forward to the shelter or to the safe zone. So we collected some numbers, some data from November 16th, when the safe zone opened, November 16th of 2020, to January 31st. So in total, we had contact with 173 individuals who we offered services to. Most of those individuals, as you see here, refused. 119 of them. Three did accept services to the safe zone, and 3 accepted full services to the shelter. I know Jamie got, and maybe council even got a email relatively recently from the shelter, and those numbers don't match. I will tell you that we are in contact with Director Fallberg, I believe is her name. We're in contact with her. She is looking at this with us. We were just on the phone with her today again, and she's looking in to see where they're falling down, because I know we brought people there. I can show you on body cam video. I have all the evidence. So she's been very good to work with. She does believe that there's a gap in the system there, and they're trying to figure out where. We think what's happening is we're bringing somebody in from Port Orange, but they're crediting them to Daytona Beach, or they're crediting them to some other PD. That's what we think is going on. Purely, I don't believe there's any, it's not purposeful. I think it's an accident. So we're going to get that corrected and get those numbers straight. And so there were some that were denied access, which caused us some concern. Again, I'm trying to give them a little bit of a break because it is new to them too. They're working through some growing pains as well, coming off the COVID situation. They're working through some growing pains. And so I think we'll get there. But I do think the relationship is a good working relationship. I think it's one that is needed. This is just a pie chart of what I just went over as far as the numbers.
Chief, if I can interject, before you move on to that, what were the reasons that were given that they were denied entry, if you recall?
Capacity. They were at capacity.
In the safe zone?
Those were, I can't remember now. To be honest,
Could it be prior to the opening of the safe zone?
No, this was after the safe zone opened in November 16th. I believe it was the safe zone, but I will double check on that, and I will go through city manager to get that information to the council.
Yeah, that's important.
I do believe it was safe zone, if my memory serves me correct. I had a captain do this for me, and I believe the information that was given to me was it was the safe zone, but I will confirm that for you.
So I'll address that with the board, because that was a big thing for us, was if we're going to participate, there's got to be room in the inn.
Yes, yeah. And you know, just being part of this process, and I agree with you, Councilman, we have to have room. But as I think I went on to this one, where you see the large majority of people, 119, refuse services. But what it gives us is it gives us that ability to offer. And when we have that ability to offer, now we get into the Pottinger compliance, which is what we're really aiming for. We're really aiming for to provide services to individuals. But the offside of that is, or the indirect advantage to us is, it makes us Pottinger compliant. So we can work that. And we talked about quality of life issues earlier, Mayor. So that would be one of them. So it is a work in progress. Again, these numbers are pretty low because we've only started really in November, and we only looked at a snapshot till end of January, which was the beginning of, or almost the beginning of this past month. So I think next year, we'll have a better grasp of this with more numbers. But I do think there's value here. I truly do. It does give us that ability to offer services and again, be Pottinger compliant. So that's all the slides I have for you. If you have any questions or concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them, or try to.
Chase, why don't we go ahead and leave with you?
I want to come back to me because I got a number of things, because I wanted to also offer an update and then a suggestion for council. So I can go last.
Okay. Jonathan?
I don't have any questions about the presentation, but I hope now is the appropriate time to say this. I just wanted to speak about the woman who was killed outside of the First Step shelter and how sad that was. The shelter, I met with Mark when they were first starting the shelter, and I've attended a board meeting there and seen you have a lot of people who really, really care about this project, and they want to see it succeed. And then you see somebody who's making that effort, who is on her way to work on her first day, and to have something like that happen, I know it devastated a lot of people, but I just wanted to say something about it because I thought it's sad to see when you see that person that really wants to get their life right. They want to help themselves. They're not one of the 119 that refuse services. And it's so sad to see something happen to someone like that who's trying to get their life going in a positive direction. So I just wanted to make note of that.
Drew?
No, I don't really have anything. I appreciate the update and the work. I know it's a daunting task at times, but hopefully with the panhandling ordinance and that word getting out, hopefully you have all the tools now necessary to.
Yeah, and thank you. I think we're getting there. I do. Again, you brought up the panhandling ordinance. Thank you. Wednesday evening or Tuesday evening it passed, and Wednesday morning we were at it. And I had my officers on the road at 9 a.m. Unfortunately, we got beat to the punch. I didn't realize that Councilman Bastian started his tour of duty at 7 a.m. The phone did not stop ringing, and so but we caught up, but he was out there. I'm afraid, Mayor, I might have to put him on payroll. So for the work he did out there, so I'm a little nervous about that. I'm going to make budget this year, so. Jamie gave a good report on that, and all indications are it's working. We will stay with it. We have special operation patrol scheduled for tomorrow and Thursday as well. Excellent. And hopefully from that point on, it's a maintenance issue. So,
Chief, and my compliments to the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, make sure you're done.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Scott?
Chief, thanks for the presentation. So roughly, it looks like rough math, about 92% of everybody that the officers encounter are either refusing the service or they're just not going to be eligible.
Correct.
But that's kind of what we knew. That's kind of what we thought. And really, I think it's important for us to keep things in perspective that this is a lot about giving our officers on the street options, about having resources available. And we know that they're just like in other situations, sometimes people are just not going to want to take what's offered and what's available. If you can get back on the one issue, I just want to make sure, if they're not eligible for the shelter itself, does that automatically mean they're not eligible for the safe zone? And so if you can just follow up with that and clarify that for us, I want to make sure we're clear on that, because I thought that, at least my initial thought is that would probably be the case sometimes, is that they're not eligible for the shelter, but the safe zone would be the second option and with lesser requirements for them to be there. So if you could just follow up and just check in that. And then lastly, just a comment, Chief, there's been not very many, just a couple of comments from folks. I'm not even sure that there are residents, and I've seen them on social media and a couple of contacts. It's almost weird because it's like there's something they want to say, but they don't want to say it. And my sense is, and maybe it's having worn the uniform, that they just don't think our officers do enough to try to help and provide services. And I take exception to that because I've seen that so many countless times. I've seen police officers who financially don't have it, but they'll pull money out of their own pocket and they'll buy groceries, they'll buy food, they'll buy diapers, I've seen them not hand them, but provide services and pay for motel rooms out of their pockets to get people out of the way of bad storms and things like that are homeless. So the compassion knows no boundaries. They can't do that all on their own backs and all on their own wallets, and it's great that some services and some options and resources, but I just want to note that I take exception with anybody who suggests that our officers don't provide every opportunity and extend those services that are out there. And there are a ton of services. I know Jamie put that out. I believe it came from Jamie. If not, I apologize. But what are all the services around? And regionally is what we are talking about in services. That's the one thing people have to keep in mind, is that these are regional services. So, but there's a huge list of organizations and nonprofits and churches and now governments even involved. And so, it's not that these services don't exist. Many times it's the fact that they don't want to accept the offer of the services. and there's only so much we can do with that, and we're not going to force people to take something in a service. But I just want to, you know, I want to commend the officers, and I appreciate, because I know exactly how that plays out, and I've seen it, you know, and I've seen it on the streets, and you know, and it's not easy, and it's a challenge, and the officers do a great job day in and day out. So I just want to compliment the department.
Thank you for
and
saying that.
And the work and the patience with that.
Thank you for saying that, and you know, I do agree with you. You talked about 92%, and it's something we did anticipate. I'll tell you, in my 33 years of experience, that is the norm.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but it's the norm. There's rules that have to be adhered to when you go into a shelter, and that is, you can't drink, you can't abuse drugs, you can't swear, you can't do, and there's rules, and sometimes they just don't want to comply with those rules, so they just say no thank you. So again, we won't force that, but our officers do a great job in trying to find services for our people, and they do at times take out of their own pockets. And just as I know it's a long meeting, but just as an example, this past holiday season, because of COVID, we typically collaborate with Target stores for Shop with a Cop for the children that are less fortunate. Because of COVID, we couldn't do that with them. We didn't stop. We had a group of officers put together a bigger and better program. We did it all on our own, and again, thank you to the community, because they donated. Not only our commercial or corporate citizens, but our residents as well, and officers donated, and we supplied more gifts to more families. Matter of fact, it got overwhelming. The EOC, which I think you all know, you couldn't fit in there. It was so many gifts and toys and bicycles and such. So they do, and I appreciate you saying that, Councilman, because it does mean a lot to our officers. When people, you know, and people do say things, and I think they just, they call it Money City, I heard. And we didn't have any enforcement. So they weren't bothered, if you will. And so it wasn't attractive nuisance, I guess. It was attractive to them to come here, and it was worth it to them. So, but we did run into 9, and each one of them, our goal, I said from day one, was compliance. And I say that for almost anything. I'd really rather get voluntary compliance than arresting anybody or issuing a citation.
Of course.
We got compliance. So far, so good. I think that's my time to end. And so far, so good. Again, the rest I'm hoping will be maintenance, and we're going to stay on top of it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that we've had more technology clips tonight than we had in every meeting combined in 2020.
I know, I'm afraid to touch something like electrocuted or something.
Chief, I want to thank you very much. Chase, I know you've got more.
Yeah, well, I'll address the chief real fast. First of all, on the panhandle issue, and let's make sure we remind people once again that panhandling and homelessness are two completely separate issues. We just happen to be mixing them for discussion purposes. But my comments or compliments to you and your staff for a great job you're doing across the board. You got one of the best in the service industry out there, and Officer Fleming as well. Glad that he's here tonight. But I appreciate the manner in which you're addressing it too, because I've been asked a lot, are you ticketing people? Are you guys looking to arrest people? And it's, you know, knowing your persona and your leadership style, it's nice to be able to tell people, no, we're not looking to arrest people. We're not looking to ticket people. We're not trying to profit or get revenue from this. We're just simply looking for voluntary compliance and trying to educate folks. And that's good community policing, frankly.
So we look at it as a tool, Councilman. It's a tool to get the job done, but we don't necessarily have to pull that tool out of the toolbox.
I don't think I have any more questions for the chief, but I'll have some comments on the shelter.
We'll make them, because this is it.
I was giving the chief time if he wanted to sit down, if he wanted to.
He's here on the shelter, so he can't sit down.
Oh, of course. All right. Well,
sorry.
Let me just educate a lot of folks about there, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, but there's a lot of misnomers about this, and there's a lot of negative talk about the shelter. At the very beginning of this presentation of the First Step Shelter, it was brought before us as council as a very low barrier, come as you are shelter. And I recall being opposed to that I believe in come as you are, but not stay as you are. So I personally, and I don't believe council wanted to be a part of a program that basically, if you can just come as you are, treat it like a hotel, leave the next day, come back the next day, then there's no point for us to participate in a program like that, because at that point, you're subsidizing homelessness. You're enabling it. You're offering an opportunity for people to continue that lifestyle, and that's not something that is a wise use of tax dollars. So when I got on the board, and other board members all agreed as well, that if we're going to do this, and we're going to use, and taxpayer dollars is going to be the last resort of having a program like this, then it's going to be designed to get people back on their feet and make them productive members of society again. That's the ultimate goal. So when we went away from the selling pitch on how it was first proposed to the public, that put us in a bind in which now we had to have so-called safe zone because there is a program, a requirement if you're going to go through the shelter. But in order to fulfill the promises that were made to us cities, municipalities, then we had to make that accommodation. Catholic Charities was going to be outrageous in their costs for doing that. So with some finagling, we were able to get out of a 5-year contract with them and bring all the operations in-house. Now, that was quickly done, and as you mentioned, a lot thrown on our staff internally to handle everything, including a safe zone, which is not ideal. If I were not serving as a city council member and I were just a board member, I would have been completely opposed to having a safe zone on our campus, because they're completely diametrically opposed to one another. You don't want to ever mix crowds. However, that's the situation we're in, and we need to fulfill our at least the promises that were made to the cities. So with that being said, there's the history behind it. What we need to decide as a council is, will we continue to participate in this? And as the chief mentioned, that this is an important tool in the box to help keep our streets and our parks safe. And whether or not people use it or not, you know, we need to decide, okay, are we going to continue to be a participating city? If so, then we need to talk about our financial commitments to it. And if not, then we need to decide what we're going to do internally to help us to be compliant with the law. That means we're going to have to establish our own safe zone somewhere, and then we're going to have to advertise which house it's behind or whose business it's close to. And I'm not prepared to do that. So the question,
way to make this work.
it's the most cost-effective option from my standpoint. And I'm not trying to make an advocate one way or another. I'd be, whatever council would want to do, I'd want to be unified and go into it together. But that being said, we made our initial financial commitment back in 2017. That money was restricted until the shelter was operational, which means that money was not applied to the use of the budget until 2019-2020. We're now in the middle of 2021. We need to determine whether or not we are going to make a budget resolution in order to fulfill our financial commitment for this fiscal year. So that's really the overall question at hand for council. Is that something we need to decide now or put on an agenda item for later on? But I throw that out to council as to what we want to do.
Any other comments or questions? Chief, I appreciate all that you guys are doing, particularly with this and making it work. We got to remember, this is not a static situation. We're talking about something that they've been open a little more than a year, but with the starts and stops and COVID, the safe zone is brand new, effectively. This is a very fluid situation, so I appreciate you keeping us up to date on
Thank
that.
you.
Thanks, Chief. Before we move on, Mayor, I would like to get some hear feedback from council if we want to look to do a budget resolution for our financial commitment for 2021, or if we put it on a future agenda.
I was going to say, we'd need to put it on a future agenda, and I think Jamie and I had a conversation about that the other day.
Sounds good.
We need, yeah, because we can't just open.
No,
open
yeah, I didn't want to
conversation.
have a vote on it. I just want to make sure we get it on an agenda.
You got it. Authorization to submit the proposed project lift of River to Sea TPO 2021 Transportation Improvement Program Priority List, which is item 28. The recommended motion is to move to authorize staff to submit the applications for the 2021 priority project ranking for transportation improvements to the River to Sea Transportation Planning Organization as listed on the staff report included in this agenda packet. May I have such motion?
Motion approved as the mayor stated.
Second.
We have a motion, the proper second. The item's open on the floor for discussion. You know, it's twice in one night after so long.
Yeah, it just so happens that Tim's not able to attend. All right, Margaret Tomlinson, Construction and Engineering Manager. So it is that time of year again for the city to submit transportation projects to the TPO. As you know, we've used this program to fund a lot of transportation projects. Most notably, recently we had the Dunlawton Street Lighting Project and the North Spruce Creek Road Sidewalk Project. We have 3 new projects on our list for you to consider. The first is the Eastbound Access Improvement Project. It's on Spruce Creek Road between Dunlawton Avenue and Commonwealth Boulevard. The second one would be the sidewalk gaps and curb ramp replacement. This also is on Spruce Creek Road. It's the entire stretch between Dunlawton Avenue and Oak River Drive, which is the southernmost side street within the city limits on Spruce Creek Road. And then our third project is the Madeline Avenue eastbound and westbound turn lane improvements at Nova Road. I can go into those, into more detail on those if you'd like. I also wanted to mention that because of the new policy for design cost that FDOT has implemented, there's a threshold of $250,000. So we are bundling projects that make sense to bundle, same type,
Sure,
in similar
Yeah, I noticed that, like
locations
with the
to try
Madeline
to.
one, which is near and dear to my heart because it affects me twice a day. Bundling the ADA pedestrian access signalization with it, which I'd love us to have those things all around the city. I thought that was a terrific addition to that, to make that, if we're going to do that project, let's do it right.
Great.
Anybody have any questions about what we read in our agenda packets? There's a lot of detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy. Tim would still be going if he were here. Would anyone here care to speak to the item? Come on up, Robert.
Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive North, Port Orange. With regard to the list, there was a second tier, and one of the projects in the second tier had to do with Willow Run Boulevard and a extension of the sidewalk between Harm Avenue and Nova on the south side. Now, we already have a sidewalk on the north side, which is asphalt, and it's in terrible shape. And I'd sure like to see that the emphasis be put on replacing the north side and not the south side, because the south side, there are no houses on the south side, and there's a ditch, swale or whatever it is, that separates any properties, residential or business properties, from the street. So I'd like to see you move that to the north side. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Anyone else here to care to speak to this item? There being none, back to us. Council, questions, comments?
Just, I'll echo Robert's comments. I ride up down Willow Run often, and I would like to see those sidewalks on that north side get addressed at some point.
And that's a maintenance issue separate
Right.
from this, but absolutely relevant. Any other questions or comments? There being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Foley?
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont?
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian?
yes,
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 5-0. That brings us to item 29, rules of procedures. The recommended motion is to move to approve the local rules of procedures as presented. There were a bunch of minor, well, not even a bunch, there were some minor changes from the rules that we've been using last year. The gist of it is the same. I think everybody had a chance to read it. Any comments or questions, council?
Just like some cleanup work. It's good to me.
Do we have anybody on there?
Just one. Which page was that? City manager being authorized to call workshops. What do we need to change that? What do we need to add that for?
So that they have the ability to call workshops when a relevant issue comes up that we don't know about.
We always know about it, though.
We don't always know about it.
We always discuss it, and
If it comes up, if it comes up in the city manager's office, whoever he or she may, they can call that. Otherwise, it's gonna take a meeting, which could be 2 more weeks before we can discuss it, and then we can call a workshop. And depending on when that meeting is, that might push that workshop into the next month. The government's slow enough. Just saying. Any other comments or questions? Would anyone here care to speak to the item? Did I get a motion, Robin? Okay, I'm sorry. The recommended motion was to move to approve the local rules of procedure as presented. May I have such motion?
So moved.
Second.
The item is open and on the floor for discussion. Any other discussion, council? Now I'll offer it again to the public properly. Back to us. Being none, call the roll.
Councilmember Foley?
Yes.
Councilmember Tremont?
Yes.
Councilmember Stiltner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bastian?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 5-0. Additional items, city attorney?
Nothing further tonight.
Very good, Matt.
Well done.
Item 31, interim city manager?
Nothing further tonight.
Excellent,
Oh,
Jamie,
all right,
excellent.
Jamie. Great work.
Council committee reports, Fire Pension Board.
It's Jonathan, isn't it?
Hey, that's me. All right, Mayor, Council. Tonight, Fire Pension Board meeting held its quarterly meeting before ours here in these chambers. A couple things to note. The fund was up 13% in Q4. They're really happy with the way that's done. The state actually has mandated some changes to the mortality policy, which is a little interesting. There's actually a statute that says they're not allowed to do that, but they did impose that. I asked the gentleman who was presenting if he could get some more information back to me. He's going to about that. Because of that, there's some concern about the state mandating the expected return rate in the future. Currently, tonight, the board decided to set the expected return rate to 7.35, which is the same as last year. But FRS has set theirs to 7, and since they have imposed this mortality change to the plan, there are concerns that they may try to impose that expected rate of the return, which could affect the city's contribution, as I understand it. So it's just something to be note on there. There'll be more updates coming to us, and at the next meeting, I'm sure I'll have a lot more information on some of that for you guys. But otherwise, so the fund's up, it's doing well, it's performing. Interesting, also, I noted this. At one point in 2011, the fund was only at 42% funding. It's now up to almost 70%. So it's come a long way in a decade.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Getting there. Good stuff. Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce, just want to note, after hours, they're having an after hours this Thursday at Realty Pros. It's an outdoor event in Daytona Beach Shores, and I want to congratulate the Port Orange South Daytona Chamber for opening their annex in Daytona Beach Shores. And the interim city manager and I will have our monthly meeting with the chamber representatives this Friday. And that brings us to the Roundtable of elected officials. And that one is real easy since we did not meet in February. we will be meeting, well, every once in a while we skip. I do want to, well, you put it on there, you don't know. Bob Apgar, the mayor of DeLand, has chaired that for the last 4.5 years. And he has faithfully passed the gavel, and Heidi Herzberg, the mayor of Deltona, will take over chairing that. And all I can say about that for me is, Heidi will be very capable in running the roundtable of elected officials moving
And
forward.
the energy level just went up a notch too.
You know it. You know it. She will bring the heat. Ladies and gentlemen, if nothing else comes before us this evening, have a good night.